The birthday. The morning of Richard Miller's 35th birthday began like any other for Laura Miller. But inside, a secret plan made the September sun shine with a different light. They had been married for 4 years during which routine had settled into their marriage with the comfort of an old armchair. They loved each other, that was undeniable. But his job as general manager at Apex Engineering Group, AEG, had become a third party, a demanding lover that stole his nights and weekends. That's why today was different. Today, Laura was going to declare a small war on that routine with a surprise. As Richard left the house in his gray suit and his morning expression of concentration, Laura was already awake, pretending to sleep. She heard him moving around the kitchen, the clink of his mug, the soft slam of the refrigerator door. When the sound of his car engine faded down the street, she sat up. The silence of the house was her ally. The plan was in motion. It wasn't just about celebrating his birthday. It was about reminding him that, beyond spreadsheets and meetings, there was a life, their life together, waiting for him. She dressed carefully, choosing a blue dress that Richard always said brought out her eyes. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and a nervous smile played on her lips. What if I'm bothering him? What if he's in an important meeting? She shook her head, dismissing the thoughts. After 4 years, she deserved the right to an unexpected interruption. Her first stop would be the Parisian patisserie, the French bakery downtown. Not just any cake, but a box of macarons, those little, colorful sweets that had been his obsession during their honeymoon in Paris. Each bite would be a trip back in time, a reminder of shared laughter and cobblestone streets. She drove downtown with the windows down, feeling the breeze on her face. The city bustled around her, but she was in her own bubble of anticipation. Entering the Parisian patisserie, the scent of butter and almonds enveloped her like a hug. She carefully selected a dozen macarons, raspberry, pistachio, coffee, and of course, the vanilla one Richard loved so much. The little box, tied with a silk ribbon, was a gift in itself. It was perfect. Back in the car, with the small luxury on the passenger seat, she hesitated for a moment. She could go home and wait for him, surprise him with dinner. But no, the idea of seeing him on his turf, in that world he told her less and less about, was too tempting. She wanted to see him in his element. She wanted, even if just for a moment, to be part of that part of his day that was foreign to her. Apex Engineering Group, AEG for those in the know, was a mystery she was determined to unravel, starting with a surprise visit on his birthday. She started the car and headed towards the financial district, towards the imposing glass building that housed her husband's dreams, and unbeknownst to her, the seeds of her own doubt. Chapter 2. The Encounter with the Receptionist. The AEG building loomed before Laura like a fortress of steel and glass, reflective and impenetrable. She clutched the box of macarons to her chest as if it were a talisman and crossed the heavy glass doors. The change was abrupt. From the heat and bustle of the street, she stepped into a climate-controlled silence that smelled of cleanliness and power. The lobby was vast, with polished marble floors reflecting the light from huge hanging lamps. She felt tiny, an intruder in an orderly, silent ecosystem. She walked towards the central reception, a long, sleek island of dark wood. Behind it, a woman with black hair pulled into a severe bun and a fitted dress watched her with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. A plaque on her chest read, "Chloe Sullivan, Reception." "Good morning," said Laura, trying to inject confidence into her voice. "I'm here to see Richard Miller, please." Chloe slid her fingers over her computer keyboard without looking away from the screen. Her perfectly manicured nails produced a soft click-clack. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked without looking up. "No, I don't. It's a surprise. It's his birthday," Laura explained, raising the box of macarons slightly as proof. The receptionist finally looked up, and this time her gaze was slower, more analytical. She scanned Laura from head to toe, scrutinizing her dress, her sandals, her hair slightly tousled by the car wind. That look made Laura suddenly feel informal, out of place. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Miller has a very tight schedule. I can't disturb him without a prior appointment," Chloe declared, and her tone was final, as if she had dropped a slab on the counter. Disappointment was beginning to tinge with irritation when another woman emerged from behind a column. Her presence was different. She wore an impeccable pantsuit, high heels that resonated with authority on the marble, and carried a tablet and a folder under her arm. She had wavy, chestnut hair falling to her shoulders and a serene, efficient beauty. She approached the reception desk. "Chloe, the documents for the 11 o'clock meeting with the contractor," said the newcomer, placing the folder on the desk. It was then that Chloe, the receptionist, did something that froze the blood in Laura's veins. She turned to the woman in the pantsuit and, with a smile that was now genuine, almost complicit, said, "Ah, Miss Evans. Well, you know for Mr. Miller, you are a priority. I'll let him know immediately." Laura held her breath. Miss Evans, Evelyn. The name rang a bell, a distant echo of some past conversation Richard had mentioned in passing. But it wasn't the name that hit her, it was what followed. Chloe, realizing Laura was still standing there, visibly unsettled, turned to her with a mixture of condescension and annoyance, and clarified, as if explaining something to a child. "You'll have to excuse me, but it's just that Mrs. Miller has priority access. You'll have to wait." The words echoed in Laura's skull like a bell. Mrs. Miller. She was Mrs. Richard Miller. She had been for 4 years. What game were they playing? Who was this woman whom the receptionist, with total naturalness, referred to with her title? She felt the marble floor move beneath her feet. Evelyn Evans, for her part, cast a quick, neutral glance at Laura, a glance that betrayed no recognition, before turning and walking towards the elevators. And Laura, from her spot at the reception, paralyzed, witnessed Chloe and Evelyn exchange one last look, a fleeting meeting of eyes that to her, in her confusion and growing alarm, could only be read as a shared secret. Chapter 3, First Surveillance. The blood pounded in her ears with a deafening rhythm, drowning out the discreet hum of the lobby. The receptionist's words, "Mrs. Miller," still spun in her head like a knife. Without thinking, her fingers gripping the box of macarons that now seemed a ridiculous and naive object, Laura headed for the bank of elevators Evelyn Evans had just used. She couldn't leave. Not after that. She had to see him. She had to confirm with her own eyes that her husband, her Richard, was up there, in his office, simply being the general manager and not the protagonist of this strange scene she had just witnessed. An elevator with several employees opened. She slipped in, keeping her eyes downcast. The others got off on lower floors until, finally, the doors opened on the 7th floor. General Management read an elegant metal sign. The hallway was wide, silent, carpeted. To her left, a large glass wall allowed a view into a spacious office. And there he was, Richard, with his back to her, talking to an older man with graying hair and an authoritative demeanor, whom she recognized from photos as Arthur Jenkins, the senior partner. The sight of her husband, secure in his element, should have calmed her, but her heart wouldn't stop beating violently. She slipped along the glass wall, staying in a shadowed area of the hallway. From there, although she couldn't hear the words clearly, the conversation was visible. Richard was gesticulating, pointing to some blueprints spread out on a meeting table. Arthur was nodding, arms crossed, and then the office door opened and Evelyn Evans walked in. She didn't knock. She simply opened the door and walked in, with a naturalness that felt like a direct blow to Laura's stomach. Evelyn joined the conversation, pointing at something on the blueprints. Richard smiled at her, a quick professional gesture, but to Laura, in her state of hypervigilance, that smile had a hint of intimacy. It was then that Arthur Jenkins spoke. and Laura, straining her ears, caught fragments of the conversation. The Emerald Tower project. Delivery at the end of the month. Your team and Miss Evans's. Emerald Tower. A name Richard had mentioned in passing as a heavy project. But he had never, ever told her that Evelyn Evans, the woman the receptionist called the wife, was part of his team. It was a deliberate omission, a secret. The certainty settled in her chest, cold and heavy. He worked side by side with that woman and had hidden it from her. Her surprise visit, her box of macarons, her blue dress. It was all a pathetic farce. She felt an urgent need to flee. As she turned through the glass, she saw Evelyn's desk, right outside Richard's office. On it, next to the monitor, a set of car keys with a rubber duck keychain, and she mentally noted, with automatic precision, the license plate of the blue Mazda she had seen parked in the director's spot, 892 KPR. It was the only tangible thing she had in the midst of that shipwreck. Chapter 4, The Lie at Home. The drive home was a blur. The streets, the traffic lights, the pedestrians, everything passed before her eyes like a meaningless backdrop. The box of macarons lay on the passenger seat, a silent mockery. Upon arriving, she left the box on the kitchen table and stared into the emptiness of the house. The silence, which had been her ally in the morning, was now oppressive. 4 years. 4 years of sharing a roof, a bed, a life. Was it all a lie? Or was she becoming paranoid? The image of Evelyn walking into the office without knocking, Richard's smile, the receptionist's phrase, all mixed in a torturous loop. The hours passed with agonizing slowness. She prepared dinner, moving like an automaton. She set the table with special care, as if the ritual could bring back normality. 7 p.m., 8, 9. Richard didn't come home. There was no call, no text. At 10 o'clock sharp, she finally heard the sound of the key in the lock. The door opened and he walked in the same gray suit from the morning, but now with his tie undone and visible fatigue on his face. "Hey, honey," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door and coming over to give her a fleeting kiss on the cheek. "Hi, happy birthday," she murmured, unable to return the smile. "I made your favorite." "Sorry, I'm terribly late. This Emerald Tower project is a nightmare," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. Laura watched his every gesture, the way he avoided her gaze when he said Emerald Tower, the way he poured himself some water, taking a long drink, as if to buy time. "Is it that bad?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Do you need extra help? Any new engineers on the team?" Richard shook his head, taking a bite of food. No, the usual team. Arthur is all over me, as always. Pressure from all sides. I wish I could just disconnect." It was her chance. She opened the door carefully. "That's why I thought, maybe I could visit you at the office someday. Bring you lunch, like I used to. It's been forever since I've been." The reaction was instant, almost imperceptible, but Laura caught it. A slight tension in his shoulders, a faster blink. "No, Laura, please," he said, and his tone was sharper than he intended. "That building is a madhouse. People coming and going non-stop. It's the last place I'd want to see you. I'd much rather you be here, in our home, where everything is peaceful. It's my refuge." His words, which at another time might have sounded like a desire to protect their shared space, now sounded like a warning, a wall. "Don't come to my territory. Don't cross this line." Laura nodded slowly, looking at her plate. She asked no more questions. She didn't mention the patisserie, the receptionist, or the woman in the pantsuit. In the silence that settled between them, more eloquent than any argument, Laura knew with absolute certainty. It wasn't jealousy she felt. It was well-founded suspicion, and her husband, the man she loved, was lying to her. Chapter 5, Second Surveillance, the Child. The doubt had settled in her mind like a toxic guest, poisoning every thought. The next day, Laura couldn't concentrate on anything. Her veterinary clinic, normally her sanctuary, felt like a distant place. At lunchtime, instead of eating, she got in her car and headed back to the financial district. This time, her intention was not to go in, but to observe from the shadows. She parked on a side street with a clear view of AEG's main entrance and sank into her seat, feeling a mix of shame and determination. She didn't have to wait long. Just after 1 p.m., Evelyn Evans exited the building. She was alone. She walked quickly and purposefully towards a sleek blue Mazda. The blue Mazda, license plate 892 KPR. Laura started her car, keeping a safe distance. Her heart was pounding against her ribs. Following someone was something she only saw in movies. And yet there she was, the protagonist of her own marital thriller. Evelyn didn't head to a business lunch spot, but drove to a more residential, cozy neighborhood and parked in front of The Daily Grind, a cafe with a familial air. Laura parked further ahead, hidden behind a van. And then she saw her. A little girl, no more than 4 or 5 years old, came running out of the cafe towards Evelyn. She was wearing a pink dress and pigtails that bounced with every jump. "Mommy!" The word, clear and sweet, reached Laura through the half-open car window. Evelyn crouched down, opening her arms, and the girl leaped into a hug that seemed to last an eternity. But they weren't alone. Behind the girl, an older man with white hair and a kind appearance came out of the cafe. He exchanged a few words with Evelyn and gave the girl a kiss on the cheek before leaving, like a grandfather or a relative. Laura couldn't look away from the scene. Evelyn was a mother. That was new information, huge information. And then, as the girl laughed, turning towards her mother, the sunlight illuminated her face fully, and Laura caught her breath. The hair was a lighter brown, but it had the same rebellious curl as Richard's, the shape of her eyes, almond-shaped and lively, even the way she bit her lower lip, concentrating, when Evelyn adjusted one of her pigtails. It was a subtle resemblance, the kind of likeness people ignore or attribute to coincidence. But for Laura, with her senses sharpened by suspicion and pain, it was like a blow of revelation. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in a terrible, logical way. The receptionist calling her the wife, Evelyn's naturalness in the office, Richard's lie, and now this child, this precious little girl who bore an uncanny resemblance to her husband. The devastating conclusion made its way into her mind. Chloe, she had heard Evelyn call her Chloe, was Richard's secret daughter. Chapter 6. The Resemblance. She didn't know how she got home. The journey was a void, an interval of time in which her mind kept replaying the image of the girl with the pigtails, the girl who looked like Richard, Chloe. Upon entering the house, empty once again, she collapsed. The strength that had sustained her during the surveillance vanished, leaving her trembling and empty. She locked herself in the study, turned on her laptop, and with shaking hands began searching social media. She searched for Evelyn Evans, AEG, Evelyn Evans civil engineer. The profiles were private or professional with few personal photos. There was no trace of the child. The frustration grew. She needed proof. She needed to see that resemblance again, analyze it, confirm it wasn't her imagination playing tricks on her. The next day, Thursday, she called in sick. Her excuse was a migraine, and she wasn't entirely lying because a dull pain was drilling at her temples. She took her camera with the telephoto lens, equipment she used to photograph animals at the clinic, and took up her post again near the Daily Grind. It was earlier, hoping to capture the moment Evelyn dropped off or picked up the child. The wait was agonizing. Every minute that passed increased her feeling of guilt and madness. What had she become? Finally, she saw them. Evelyn holding Chloe's hand, walking towards a nearby park. Laura, hidden behind some bushes, began shooting. Click. Chloe running. Click. Chloe laughing, climbing onto a swing. Click. A close-up of her face, lit by the morning sun. Each photograph was a knife. The more she looked through the lens, the more convinced she became. It wasn't just her imagination. The curve of her eyebrow, the shape of her chin, even the dimple that formed in her cheek when she smiled, it all reminded her of Richard's childhood photos that his mother kept. The mental torture was unbearable. Should she confront him? Call him and drop the bomb? I know you have a daughter with your engineer. But what if she was wrong? She would ruin their marriage forever. Or should she investigate further? She needed a last name, a birth certificate, something to give her the certainty she desperately craved. That night, Richard came home late again. Laura was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. He got into bed beside her, turning his back to her. She stayed awake, her eyes open in the gloom, watching her husband's silhouette. Then in silence, she opened her phone and started going through the photos again and again. She zoomed in, cropped them, studied every pixel of that child's face. It was an obsession. The small, smiling Chloe had become the shadow that filled every corner of her house and her heart. Chapter 7: The Visit to the Building. The obsession was now a physical force driving her forward. Laura couldn't just sit around analyzing photos. She needed concrete data, an address, a name. The next day, Friday, she returned to her surveillance post near Evelyn's office. This time, her patience was rewarded differently. Evelyn left the AEG building at an unusual time, mid-afternoon, and didn't head to the cafe or the park. She got into her blue Mazda and drove to a neighborhood of older, middle-class apartment buildings, well-kept but modest. She stopped in front of a building on Oak Tree Lane. Laura parked at a safe distance, her heart racing. This was new. She watched as Evelyn got out, not only with her purse, but also with a grocery bag that seemed to contain medicines and some food items. She went up to the second floor to apartment 52 and opened the door with her own key. Minutes later, Laura could see, briefly appearing at the window, a younger woman, pale and thin, wrapped in a bathrobe. It was the same woman she had seen with the child at the cafe, the one she had mistaken for a nanny or a young grandmother. Evelyn put a protective arm around her shoulders before the curtain closed. Laura moved a little closer, risking exposure, and took shelter in the doorway of a building across the street. She got lucky. After an hour, the door to apartment 52 opened again. The pale woman, bundled up despite the warmth, came out holding Chloe's hand. Evelyn followed them. "Don't worry, Hannah. The doctor said it's just a checkup," Evelyn was saying in a calm voice. "I know, Aunt Eve, but it gives me so much anxiety," replied the young woman, Hannah in a weak voice. "Aunt." The word resonated with Laura. Hannah was Evelyn's cousin, not her daughter. That ruled out. What did it rule out, really? The confusion increased. If Hannah was the cousin, who was Chloe's mother? Evelyn. She had heard her call her mommy. She followed the trio, keeping a safe distance, until they reached a small medical center a few blocks away. A new piece, a new mystery. Hannah's illness was palpable, and Evelyn was clearly her main support. Chapter 8: Chloe Evans. From the discreet shadow of a corner across from the medical center, Laura watched them go in. Her mind was a whirlwind. Aunt Hannah. That meant Chloe wasn't Hannah's daughter. The only option left standing was that the mother was Evelyn. The girl who resembled Richard was Evelyn's daughter. The logic was crushing and devastating. She waited, holding her breath, feeling like a miserable intruder, but unable to stop herself. After a while, she saw a nurse approach the waiting area. She couldn't hear what was being said, but she followed the direction of her gaze towards Evelyn and Chloe. Then her eyes landed on a monitor behind the reception desk, which from her angle she could read backwards. Concentrating, she deciphered the inverted letters on the screen corresponding to their row. Evans, Chloe N. The relief was so intense and sudden it made her slightly dizzy. She leaned against the cold wall. Evans. The child's last name wasn't Miller. It wasn't something else. It was Evans. Chloe Evans. Richard wasn't the father. The nightmare of the secret daughter vanished in an instant, leaving behind an echo of shame for having believed it possible. But the relief was short-lived, immediately replaced by a new, burning question. Then who was the father? Who was the man? And most crucially, what role did Richard play in this family that wasn't his? The confusion was now greater than before. She had discarded a catastrophic theory only to venture into a more complex labyrinth. Chapter 9. The Conversation in the Park. After the appointment, Evelyn, Hannah, and Chloe sat on a bench in a small park adjacent to the medical center. Laura, hidden behind a newsstand, could hear their voices carried by the breeze. She no longer felt the previous urgency, but the need for answers was still there. Aunt Eve. "I don't know what we'd do without your help," Hannah said, her voice breaking. "The medicines are so expensive." "Don't say that, Hannah. You and Chloe are my family. I'd do anything," Evelyn replied, taking her hand. "And that loan from Mr. Miller, God will be eternally grateful to him. It was like a miracle that you ran into him on that project." Laura held her breath. Loan from Mr. Miller? Richard. He had lent money for Hannah's treatment. It was an incredible gesture. Evelyn nodded, and her tone was one of genuine gratitude. When I told him, he didn't even hesitate. He said family health comes first. It was a lifesaver. The pieces began to fit together differently, forming a picture not of infidelity, but of a complicated web of humanitarian aid. Richard, aware of his engineer's desperate family situation, had offered financial help. Laura felt a wave of guilt rising up her neck. She had spied, she had doubted, she had imagined the worst, while her husband, in secret, had performed an act of kindness. But the guilt mixed with a lingering ember of indignation. Why hide it? Why lie? Why create that atmosphere of secrets that had poisoned their home? The relief of knowing there was no other woman fought with the anger of feeling excluded from an important part of her husband's life. Chapter 10. The tense weekend Saturday dawned with a false peace. Laura moved through the house like a ghost, watching Richard. He seemed more distant than usual, absorbed in his thoughts. They tried to have a normal day. They ate breakfast in silence. They put on some music. But the tension was a thick fog filling every room. Mid-morning, Richard's phone vibrated on the coffee table. He looked at it, and a shadow crossed his face. He picked it up and locked himself in the study to answer, lowering his voice. Must be work, Laura told herself, but she no longer believed it. Every gesture he made, every evasive glance, every pause that was too long in their conversation, fueled it all. In the afternoon, she tried to probe. "Did you hear anything more about that project? The Emerald Tower?" she asked, feigning interest. "Yeah, it's moving along, with its complications," he replied, vague, giving no details. "And the team? Everyone okay?" she insisted, looking at him intently. "Yeah, everyone's fine." He averted his gaze, dusting an imaginary speck off his book. Then, almost as if talking to himself, he added, "Well, there was a personal situation with one of the engineers, a sick cousin, a sad thing, but it's handled now." It was a minimal acknowledgement, a crumb of truth thrown into an ocean of lies. One of the engineers. He didn't even name her. "It's handled." Laura nodded, saying nothing. He had opened the door just an inch, only to immediately close it again. That glimpse of partial truth, instead of calming her, confirmed that there was a whole world of things he chose not to tell her. Chapter 11. The first partial confession. The tension built up over the weekend exploded on Sunday night. They were watching a movie, but neither was paying attention. Laura couldn't take it anymore. "Richard," she said, turning off the TV with a sharp click of the remote, "tell me about the engineer, the sick cousin." He looked at her, surprised by the direct tone. He hesitated, and Laura saw the internal debate in his eyes, to keep lying or to shed a little ballast. "It's Evelyn Evans," he finally admitted with a sigh. "Her cousin Hannah is very sick, cancer. The situation was desperate." Laura remained silent, encouraging him to continue with her gaze. "They needed money for treatment, urgently, and I lent it to them." He paused, searching for words. "It was a few months ago. I didn't want to worry you with that. It's my savings. From before we were married, I thought it wasn't necessary to burden you with someone else's problem." Laura felt a wave of relief hearing the story, which matched what she already knew. There was no romance. There was compassion, but the relief was quickly smothered by bitterness. "Are you telling me," she asked, her voice trembling, "that you lent a significant amount of money to your attractive engineer and decided the best thing was to hide it from me? Why, Richard? Why couldn't you trust me?" He became defensive. "To not worry you. To avoid exactly this, Laura. Suspicious looks, questions. It's my work, my decision." "But I'm your wife," she whispered, her heart breaking. "Decisions, especially ones that involve secrets with other women, are made together." He had confessed a truth, but he had omitted the essentials. The frequency of his contact with Evelyn, the professional intimacy Laura had witnessed, the fact that the receptionist didn't recognize her. It was a half confession, designed to appease her, not to be transparent, and Laura knew it. The relief of knowing he wasn't physically cheating on her mixed with the deep wound of knowing he still didn't trust her enough to avoid keeping secrets. Chapter 12. Dad's Call. The argument hadn't resolved anything. They had gone to sleep back to back, immersed in a silence heavy with unspoken things. Monday morning, after Richard left for the office with a curt "goodbye," Laura's phone vibrated. It was her father. "Hi, sweetheart," said the warm, familiar voice on the other end of the line. "How are things over there?" Laura felt a lump in her throat, an almost irresistible impulse to tell him everything, to break down and ask for advice from the man who always had a solution for everything. "Dad, I think my marriage is falling apart. Richard is lying to me. I've been spying on him." The words were on the tip of her tongue. "Everything's fine, Dad," she managed to say, forcing a cheerful tone. "A bit of work at the clinic, nothing out of the ordinary." "And Richard? Still on that heavy project?" "Yeah, the tower one. But you know how he is, he doesn't complain." "Take care of him, honey, and take care of yourself. You two are a team, okay? Trust is the one thing you can't fix if it breaks." Her father's phrase, said with the best of intentions, pierced her chest like a spear. Trust is the one thing you can't fix. They hung up after a few more minutes of superficial chat, and Laura was left alone, phone in hand, feeling an emotional loneliness deeper than any she had ever experienced. She couldn't tell her father. She couldn't tell anyone. She was completely alone in this battle for the truth of her own marriage. The conversation, instead of comforting her, had sealed her determination. If Richard wasn't going to give her the whole truth, she would have to keep looking for it on her own. The investigation wasn't over. It had entered a new phase. Chapter 13, Tuesday. Return to AEG determination replaced paralysis. Richard's half-confession hadn't extinguished the fire of her doubts. It had only fueled it. He thought admitting to the loan was enough, but for Laura, that was just the entry point to a larger labyrinth of secrets. She decided she needed to confront the source, that place he had forbidden her to visit. She took her lunch hour to go back to AEG. This time she wasn't carrying a box of macarons, but a shielded heart and a cold mind. The receptionist, Chloe Sullivan, recognized her immediately. Her professional smile froze slightly. "Ma'am," she said, in a tone that was neither warm nor hostile, just cautious. "Miss Sullivan," Laura nodded, leaning slightly on the counter. "Sorry about the bother the other day. It's just with birthdays. You want to be spontaneous, you know? Of course, Chloe replied, but her eyes scrutinized Laura as if trying to decipher her true motive. Laura decided to risk it. She lowered her voice, adopting a tone of female confidence. It's just that sometimes Richard gets so immersed in his work, like with this Emerald Tower project with Miss Evans. I'm afraid he'll forget to even eat. The mention of Evelyn's name made something shift behind Chloe's eyes. It was the bait and the receptionist bit. "Oh, don't worry about that," she said with a hint of complicity. "Miss Evans is very attentive to him. She always makes sure he eats. In fact, last week she brought him some artisanal chocolates, the kind they sell at the organic market. Mr. Miller loved them." Every word from Chloe was a blow. Very attentive to him. Artisanal chocolates. Laura forced a smile. How thoughtful. Yes, he mentioned it. They seem to work very closely. "Like two peas in a pod," Chloe confirmed without malice, just stating a fact. Trips to the construction site, dinners with contractors, late meetings. She's his right hand. A brilliant engineer, that's what Mr. Miller always says. Trips, dinners, right hand. The picture Chloe painted wasn't that of a boss helping an employee with a personal problem. It was that of an intimate and constant professional partnership. The last of her patience cracked. Richard's partial confession was a farce. The reality was that his life was intertwined with Evelyn's in a way he had completely omitted. With a tense smile, Laura said goodbye to Chloe. She wasn't going to wait any longer. She was going upstairs and confronting him right there, in his sanctuary, in front of everyone. Chapter 14. The Encounter in the Reception. The elevator ride to the 7th floor was the longest of her life. With each illuminated number, her heart beat harder. The doors opened and she stepped out with firm steps, heading straight for Richard's office. But life, sometimes, has an ironic sense of drama. Just as she reached the half-open door, it swung wide open and Richard came out, laughing at something someone inside the office had said. Behind him emerged Evelyn Evans. The world stopped. The three of them stood frozen in the carpeted hallway. Richard paled. Evelyn, surprised, regained her composure first. Laura looked at both of them, feeling a mix of rage and a strange calm. "Laura," Richard finally stammered, What are you doing here?" "I came to see my husband," she said with venomous sweetness, "since your office seems to be such an interesting place." Her gaze then shifted defiantly to Evelyn. Richard, nervous, swallowed hard. Laura, this is the engineer, Evelyn Evans. Evelyn, my wife, Laura." Evelyn, with an elegance that Laura found exasperating, extended her hand. "It's a pleasure, Mrs. Miller. I've heard a lot about you." Laura ignored the outstretched hand. The Mrs. Miller sounded false, an empty courtesy. "The pleasure is mine," she replied coldly. "I've heard a lot about your work, and about your cousin, and about your artisanal chocolates." Evelyn's smile faded. Richard looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. "Well," he said, forcing cheerfulness, "why don't you come into the office, honey?" The tension in the air was so thick you could cut it. Laura, without breaking eye contact with Evelyn, nodded slowly and walked into her husband's office, knowing she had crossed a point of no return. Chapter 15. The manager's office. Inside the office, everything smelled like Richard, his cologne, his orderly disorder, but to Laura, it now also smelled of betrayal. "Would you like some coffee?" he asked, uncomfortable, closing the door. "No," Laura replied, letting her gaze roam the room like a hawk. Her eyes landed on a small wooden box on a shelf. It was filled with colorful, obviously handmade chocolates, the artisanal chocolates. "Those are pretty," she commented, pointing with her chin. "Did you bring them back from your trip?" Richard followed her gaze and tensed up. "No, they were a gift." "From whom?" Laura asked, turning to face him. "Chloe, the receptionist." Or was it the right hand who is so attentive to you? He didn't answer. His silence was the most eloquent confirmation. Then Laura saw a framed photograph on the desk. It wasn't of them. It was of Richard and Evelyn on a construction site, wearing hard hats, smiling for the camera. They looked like a team, complicit. She pointed at the photo. "That's nice. You look very close." "Laura, please," he pleaded, running a hand through his hair. "It's a team photo from the project." "And why aren't there more people in this team photo?" she asked, her voice beginning to crack. "You lied to me." "Richard, you told me it was just a loan, but this..." She made a sweeping gesture that encompassed the office, the chocolates, the photo. "This is a shared life you hid from me." Chapter 16. Confession in the Office. Pushed against the ropes, Richard began to release truths in dribs and drabs, as if each one cost him a superhuman effort. "All right," he sighed, defeated. "Evelyn has been working here for 5 months. I didn't tell you because I knew it would upset you." "That it would upset me," Laura almost shouted. "That it would upset me that you hired your ex-girlfriend. It was the best for the project," he argued, defending himself. "She's the best civil engineer I know for the Emerald Tower. It was a professional decision." Laura let out a bitter laugh. "Professional? Then why didn't the receptionist know you were married? Why did she call Evelyn Mrs. Miller? Is that professional too?" Richard fell silent, looking at the floor. That was a lie he couldn't defend. "I didn't tell Chloe," he admitted in a whisper. "Evelyn. When she started, she asked for discretion. She said she didn't want our past to affect her professional image, that people would talk. I thought it was silly, but I agreed." Laura looked at him, and for the first time, she felt not just rage, but a deep, wrenching pain. "You agreed," she repeated, her voice trembling. "You agreed to hide our marriage, to hide me, to pretend I don't exist to make her life easier. That hurts more than any loan or any chocolate, Richard. You erased me." Chapter 17. The Phone. That night, the atmosphere at home was icy. There was no dinner. There were no words. Richard, overwhelmed by guilt and the confrontation, locked himself in the bathroom for a long shower. The sound of running water was the opportunity Laura needed. With hands trembling with fury and fear, she took Richard's cell phone from the nightstand. His password was their wedding anniversary, a cruel irony. She unlocked it and went straight to the messages with Evelyn. There were no hearts, no terms of endearment, but there was a frequency that took her breath away. Daily calls, dozens of messages exchanged at all hours, day, night, weekends. She scrolled up, reading fragments. "Hannah had a bad night. Did the transfer for the doctor go through? Chloe misses you, asks about Uncle Richard." And then she found the message she was looking for, the one that confirmed her entire nightmare. It was from Richard to Evelyn, sent the previous week. "Don't worry, I'll handle it. Laura isn't aware of the situation. It's better this way." Tears blurred her vision. Laura isn't aware. He had made her the intruder, the person from whom secrets involving a child's life and a sick woman had to be kept. There was no romance in those messages, but there was a brutal intimacy, an alliance from which she was excluded, a trust he had denied her, his wife, to give to another woman. The sound of the water stopped. It was time for the final confrontation. Chapter 18. The Nocturnal Confrontation. Richard came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, and found Laura sitting on the bed, holding his cell phone. His face fell. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Reading," she replied, holding up the phone. "Reading about Hannah, about Chloe, about transfers, about how Laura isn't aware." He paled. "You went through my phone," he accused, with more pain than anger. "You went through my life," she exploded, jumping to her feet, tears streaming down her face. "You lied to me. You hid that you were working with her. You hid that I exist. And on top of that, you have the nerve to feel betrayed because I looked for the truth you refused to give me." "I was trying to protect you," he shouted, desperate. "Don't protect me by lying to me," she shouted back. "I demand you tell me the truth, all of it. Who is the father? What's the story with that child? What are you to them and what are they to you? Tell me the truth, Richard, or whatever is left of this marriage will go down the drain right now." They stood facing each other, panting, in the silence of their bedroom. The masks had fallen, the half-truths were no longer enough. The breaking point had arrived, and the future of their relationship hung by a thread, waiting for the full story. Chapter 19, The Full Story. The air in the bedroom was heavy, charged with the smoke of the battle they had just fought. Richard, deflated and pale, sank onto the edge of the bed. The facade of the confident manager had crumbled, revealing a cornered man filled with remorse. "All right," he whispered, his gaze fixed on his hands. "You're right. I owe you the truth. All of it." He closed his eyes and began to narrate slowly, as if each word cost him physical effort. "It all started with the Emerald Tower project. We needed the best, and Evelyn is the best civil engineer I know. I knew it was a risk because of our past, but we talked about it. She assured me she could be professional. I believed her." Laura sat facing him in silence, ready to listen. One day, about 3 months ago, she came to the office devastated. Her cousin, Hannah, the only family she has left, had been diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer. The treatments were incredibly expensive, and they had no insurance. They were desperate. "And why didn't you tell me then?" Laura asked, her voice still shaky, but without the shout. "Pride, I guess. And fear," he admitted, finally looking her in the eyes. "I knew if I told you, I'd have to admit that Evelyn was working with me. I was afraid of your reaction. I was afraid of this. So, like a coward, I decided to handle it alone. I lent her the money from my bachelor savings. I thought it was a temporary thing, that it would be resolved and you'd never have to know." "And the child? Chloe?" asked Laura, the little girl's name leaving her lips for the first time. "Chloe is Evelyn's daughter," Richard confirmed. "Her father, David Evans, was a great friend of mine from college, a brilliant guy. He died in a car accident when Chloe was 2 years old. That's why the girl sometimes gets so attached to me. I'm the only stable man in her life, and I guess in her little head she sometimes confuses me with the idea of a dad. And she looks a bit like David. That's probably the resemblance you saw." Laura felt the last remnants of her most poisonous suspicions dissolve. She wasn't his daughter. She was the daughter of a deceased friend. The story held such enormous sadness that her own anger seemed small in comparison. "I hid everything," Richard concluded, his voice breaking, "because I got into a lie and didn't know how to get out. It just got deeper and deeper, and I failed you. I failed you horribly." Chapter 20, Evelyn's Call. The next morning dawned cold and gray. Laura hadn't been able to sleep. Richard's words echoed in her head. The story was believable, tragic, human. But the pain of the lie and the exclusion was still there, alive and sharp. As she drank coffee in the kitchen, feeling empty and exhausted, her phone vibrated. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something compelled her to. "Hello," she said cautiously. "Laura?" It was a woman's voice, serene but with a hint of nervousness. "It's Evelyn Evans." Laura was left breathless. She hadn't expected this. "What do you want?" she asked, unable to hide the coldness in her tone. "I know that last night. Things happened. Richard called me. And I know a lot of this is my fault. I asked for that stupid discretion that got you both into this mess." Evelyn paused. "I'd like to explain my side of things, of everything. without Richard in the middle, woman to woman. Would you meet with me at the Daily Grind today, if you can? Laura felt a knot in her stomach. The Daily Grind, the place where she had first seen Chloe. It was an audacious proposal, almost a provocation, but it was also an opportunity to look into the eyes of the woman who had been the ghost in her marriage and see the truth for herself. "All right," she replied, with a voice firmer than she felt. At 11. Chapter 21. Coffee with the Ex-Girlfriend. The Daily Grind was quiet at that hour. Evelyn was already at a table with 2 steaming cups of coffee in front of her. She was dressed more casually than at the office, in jeans and a jacket, which made her seem younger and somehow more vulnerable. "Thank you for coming," Evelyn said as Laura sat down. "I didn't do it for you," was Laura's honest response. "I did it for me." Evelyn nodded, understanding. "I owe you an explanation. Richard and we dated 6 years ago. We were together for 2 years. It was intense, but it didn't work out. He wanted a more stable family life. Back then, I only thought about my career. We ended on good terms, but it was definitive. There are no embers left, Laura, I swear." Laura watched her, looking for any hint of a lie in her eyes. She only saw sincerity. "When he offered me the job at AEG, I thought about it a lot, but it was the opportunity of a lifetime. And I believed him when he said we could be professional. The mistake was asking him to hide our past. It was selfish. I thought about my comfort, about not being the boss's ex-girlfriend, and I didn't think about you, his wife. It was a terrible mistake." Chapter 22. Evelyn's Truth. Evelyn took a sip of coffee, as if to give herself courage. "When Hannah got sick, my world fell apart. She and Chloe are all I have. Richard was a pillar I leaned on. He was my boss, and suddenly he became my lifeline. But never, at any moment, did we cross a line. What I feel for him is eternal gratitude and the affection of an old friend. Nothing more." "And Michael Grant?" Laura asked, remembering the name she had seen in the messages on Richard's phone. A genuine, though sad, smile appeared on Evelyn's face. "Michael, he's the lead architect on the Emerald Tower project. We've been secretly seeing each other for 4 months. That's also why I wanted discretion at first. I didn't want people to think my promotion or my closeness to Richard was due to a romance, when in reality, I was starting something with Michael. It's a new, fragile relationship, and with everything with Hannah, I didn't want more complications." Laura stared into her coffee cup. All the pieces fit. The story was not only believable, it was coherent. There was no romance between Richard and Evelyn. There was a complicated friendship, a family tragedy, and a web of poorly conceived secrets. She felt a wave of shame. Shame for having spied, for having doubted, for having imagined her husband as an unfaithful monster, when in reality he had been a friend desperate to help, even if he had done it in the most clumsy and damaging way. Chapter 23. The Confession of Spying. That night, Laura asked Richard to sit down and talk. The atmosphere was no longer one of confrontation, but of shared exhaustion. "I met with Evelyn today," Laura began. Richard's eyes widened in panic. "What? Laura, Relax," she interrupted him. "It was good. She told me her side of the story, about your relationship, about Hannah, about Michael." He looked at her astonished. "And now it's my turn to confess to you," Laura continued, taking a deep breath. "I've been watching you for days. It wasn't just the phone. I followed them, Evelyn and Chloe." She told him everything. The first time at the Daily Grind, the anguish of seeing the girl and noticing the resemblance. The visit to the building on Oak Tree Lane. Her following them to the medical center. Her desperation upon hearing the last name, Evans, and not knowing what it meant. The conversation she overheard in the park about the loan. She held nothing back. She confessed every shadow she had hidden in, every photo she had taken, every moment of mental torture. Richard listened to her in silence, processing the revelation. He didn't get angry. He didn't accuse her. When she finished, he simply said, "You must have felt so alone, so desperate to go to those lengths. I pushed you to that, with my lies." Chapter 24, The Pact of Transparency. That admission, that acknowledgement of his share of the blame without attacking hers, broke the last barrier between them. "We can't go on like this," Laura said, tears in her eyes. "This secret, it's killing us." "You're right," Richard nodded, taking her hands. "No more secrets, nothing. No matter how difficult or uncomfortable or silly it seems, total transparency." It was a pact, an oath between two people exhausted from the war and ready for a peace, however fragile. "And about Evelyn," Laura proposed. "She can't be your secret to keep. If she's your friend, and if that family is part of your life, then they have to be part of ours, of mine too. I can't be the stranger in this story anymore." Richard looked at her with a mixture of amazement and relief. "What are you suggesting?" "Invite them," said Laura with a new determination. "Her, Hannah, Chloe. Have them over for dinner. Let me meet them. Let her stop being a ghost and become a person. And her boyfriend, Michael, too, if they want. It's time to leave the shadows behind." They looked at each other, and for the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of hope. Forgiveness wouldn't be instant. Trust would take time to rebuild. But they had found a path they, for the first time, decided to walk together. Chapter 25, The Proposal. Laura's suggestion hung in the air between them, laden with profound meaning. It wasn't just a dinner, it was an act of reconciliation, a bridge extended towards a territory that had until then been hostile. Richard looked at her, and in his eyes there was no longer guilt or fear, but immense gratitude. "Are you sure?" he asked, squeezing her hands. "No," she replied honestly, "but it's what needs to be done. I don't want Evelyn to be your secret anymore. I want to know who the woman is that we almost destroyed our marriage over. And I want to meet that child, Chloe, to stop seeing her as a threat and see her for what she is, a little girl." Richard nodded, moved. "That would be incredible. They don't have much family. It would be good for them too. Thank you, Laura. Truly." That night, Richard called Evelyn. It wasn't an easy conversation, but when he explained the proposal, there was a silence on the other end filled with emotion. "Really?" asked Evelyn, her voice cracking. "Laura wants to?" "Yes, it's her idea. It's an opportunity, Eve, for everyone." Dinner was set for Friday. The following week was filled with a new energy, not of tension, but of a nervous anticipation. Chapter 26. Friday Preparations. On Friday, Laura took the day off, the house filled with the aromas of her cooking. She didn't prepare a gourmet menu, but home-cooked food, dishes that spoke of warmth and welcome, a meatloaf, a fresh salad, creamy mashed potatoes. As she cooked, Richard told her more. "David, Chloe's dad, was an incredible guy," he said, peeling potatoes beside her. "He died in a car accident, one of those absurd ones that shouldn't happen. Evelyn was shattered. Raising Chloe alone with her career, it's been really hard. That's why when Hannah got sick, it was like the world was crashing down on her again." Laura listened, and each detail made the figure of Evelyn more human, more complex, and less of a soap opera villain. She was no longer the other woman. She was a woman who had battled tragedy time and again. Chapter 27. The family dinner evening came. The doorbell rang, and Laura, still wearing her apron, opened the door. There they were, Evelyn in a simple dress, holding a bottle of wine. Next to her, Hannah, still pale but with a shy smile, and between them, Chloe, in a little blue dress and curious eyes. Behind them, a tall man with an easy smile, Michael. The introductions were a bit awkward, but the ice broke when Chloe, looking at Richard, let go of Evelyn's hand and ran to him. "Uncle Rich!" she shouted, and he lifted her into his arms naturally. The girl looked at Laura. "Hello," Laura said softly. "Hi," Chloe replied, hiding her face in Richard's shoulder. It was a start. During dinner, conversation flowed. They talked about work, about Laura's clinic, about Hannah's improvement. And then, Chloe, with the innocence of her 5 years, dropped the bombshell. "I like it when Uncle Rich comes to visit. It's like when I had a daddy." An awkward silence fell over the table. But Laura, instead of feeling hurt, felt a pang of compassion. She smiled at the girl. "Uncle Rich is very special, isn't he?" she said, and her gaze met Evelyn's, filled with gratitude. Chapter 28, Revelations in the Living Room. After dinner, while Richard and Michael washed the dishes, something Laura considered a miracle, she and Hannah sat on the sofa. "I want to thank you," Hannah said, her voice low, "for tonight, for the loan. You don't know, but that saved our lives." "Don't thank me," Laura replied. "That was Richard's decision, but I'm glad you're doing better." There was a pause. "Richard told me you're looking for work," Laura commented, "that you were an administrator before you got sick." "Yes, but with the medical history, it's complicated." Laura thought for a moment. It was crazy, but it was also the right thing to do. "My veterinary clinic is growing. I need someone to handle the books, the administration. Would you be interested in coming to work with me?" Hannah looked at her, unable to believe it. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Really? Really? We can talk details on Monday." Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Michael was saying to Richard, "She's an incredible woman, your wife." "Yes," Richard replied, looking at Laura through the doorway. "She is." Chapter 29, Goodbyes and Promises. The night ended with an atmosphere none of them would have thought possible a week before. As they said goodbye at the door, Chloe didn't want to leave. "When do I come back to Uncle Rich's house?" she asked, yawning. "Soon, sweetheart," Laura said before Richard could answer. "Whenever your mom and your aunt want." Evelyn approached Laura. "Thank you," she said, and this time her voice was a thread of contained emotion. For everything, for understanding." "Thank you for coming," Laura replied, and then they hugged. It was brief, a little awkward but real, a hug that sealed a truce, that buried the misunderstandings and opened the door to something new, perhaps even a friendship. Chapter 30, A New Perspective. The house fell silent. Laura and Richard began to collect the glasses in a comfortable silence. "That was a good night," he said finally. "Yes," she nodded. "It was healing." They sat on the sofa, exhausted but at peace. "Seeing Chloe with you," Laura began, "it made me think." "About what?" "About us. About having a child. For real." Richard looked at her, surprised. The conversation about children had always been postponed because of work, because of projects. "Are you serious?" "Yes. Today I saw that you have so much love to give to a child who isn't even yours. And I realized I want to see that love directed at a child of our own. I want to expand our family." Richard hugged her with a happiness he hadn't felt in months. "Me too," he whispered. "I want that too." The conflict was over, not with a shout, but with a dinner, and with the promise of a new beginning. Epilogue Part 1. 15 months later, Laura gently rocked Matthias, who at 5 months old had fallen asleep in her arms. Her son, her miracle. In the living room, the circle of friends, as they affectionately called it, was celebrating. Hannah, now with color in her cheeks and married to Robert, a physical therapist she met during her treatment, was telling a joke to Richard. Evelyn, radiant, was snuggled with Michael, and Chloe, now 6 years old, tiptoed over. "Can I see him?" she whispered. "Of course, big sister," said Laura, and Chloe swelled with pride at the title. She looked at the baby with adorable seriousness. "He's cute," she declared. "I'm going to teach him how to play soccer." Epilogue Part 2, The Big Family. The Emerald Tower project was complete, a skyscraper that stood as a testament to what they could achieve together. Hannah not only worked at the veterinary clinic but had become its office manager, handling the finances with an efficiency that had doubled their clientele. It was the circle's anniversary and they were toasting with wine. "To second chances," said Richard, taking Laura's hand. "To family," added Evelyn, looking at Michael, Chloe, and everyone present. "To my family," shouted Chloe, raising her juice glass, and counted on her fingers. Mom, Aunt Hannah, Uncle Robert, Uncle Rich, Aunt Laura, baby Matthias, Uncle Michael. She paused, thoughtful. "And the dogs and cats from the clinic." Laughter filled the room. Epilogue Part 3, The Future. A year later, under a pergola covered in white flowers, Evelyn and Michael sealed their love in front of all of them. Chloe was the flower girl, serious and proud. Laura, with Matthias in her arms, felt a deep peace. A few months later, Emma, the daughter of Evelyn and Michael, was born. The circle grew, filled with children's laughter and new stories. One afternoon, as the children played in the garden and the adults shared coffee, Laura reflected in silence. The shadow of distrust had been replaced by the light of a stronger trust, forged in forgiveness. It hadn't been the easy path, but it had been worth it. They had learned that love isn't just about finding the right person, but about building day by day the kind of love that endures. Sometimes, family isn't the one you're born into, but the one you choose to build, with all its pieces, even those that at first seem not to fit. The end.